Yes.
Okay, let's get to it. The fall. Obviously, this happened over the weekend. President Biden, how'd you say it? Took a spill off of his bike.
I don't know what I said.
Let's take a let's all watch the video. For those who are just listening, don't worry, it's only 8 seconds. Let's get to it. So the president there falling off of his bike, the excuse that they're giving, I'm not saying he's lying. I honestly don't ride bikes, so I don't know a lot about that. He says he got his foot stuck whenever he was unclipping his foot from the pedals.
I've done a lot of biking.
Anyway,
I've done a lot of biking. It looks like it doesn't look like his feet are clipped in. Like, you know, you get the shoes. Those of you who are Peloton riders too, it's the same thing. The shoes that clip into the pedal. It looks like he just has the little baskets that your foot goes into. One of them he, pulls out no problem. The other one gets twisted up in the basket. And
Okay, so here's what they're saying. He got his foot caught in the toe clip at the top whenever he was trying to put his foot down. And that's what resulted in him falling. Now, this is just broadly indicative of, and of course, it was capitalized on by, it is very hard to watch, of course. He's the president, he's an 80-year-old man, and I don't want to see any 80-year-old fall. It is, though, coming on the heels of a broader conversation in the US press right now, which is finally sanctioned, is Biden might just be too old to be president, or at the very least to run for president. Again, let's throw the next one up there on the screen. This was like a big breakthrough article for the DC press, which is Mark Leibovich writing in The Atlantic why Biden shouldn't run in 2024. For those who don't know Leibovich, he's an interesting guy, kind of curmudgeonly. He wrote this book called This Town back in 2010, which kind of lambasted, it was like a Bonfire of the Vanities, Tom Wolfe takedown of Washington, D.C. culture, the uber rich who run politics here in the city. But he writes in here, frankly, he just seems old, as a direct quote from a senior administration official. And he says, even to put it bluntly, Joe Biden should not run for re-election. He is just too old. Biden will be 80 in November. He will be 82 if he begins a second term. The numbers keep moving more ridiculous from there. It's not 82 that's the problem. It's the 86, as somebody said recently in a focus group. And again, not to take anything away from the accomplishments or the livelihoods of elderly Americans, but look at Dianne Feinstein. Anybody who knows somebody who is old knows that when you're this age, things go real quickly. Even a fall, it's a serious issue. I was telling you before, the #1 cause of death, this is according to the CDC, accidental cause of death for 65 plus Americans is falling. You could break a hip and you could die very quickly. People go very, off the rails whenever they're very old, and they can deteriorate. And that's why you should try and take care of yourself, lift weights and all that to prevent that from happening. But he's already on that side of 80. Look, he looks good for an 80-year-old. It's impressive that he can even ride a bike, and he seems like relatively physically fit for his age. But that doesn't take away from the fact that it is uncomfortable to watch when this is the leader of the free world. And there are many instances where having these types of spills and others publicly are major political problems because Americans aren't stupid. They hold nothing against elderly Americans in the aggregate. They have to consider it, though. It's our duty to consider it when you're entrusting somebody with an enormous level of public service. And that's why I just think it's dishonest when the Biden defenders and all of them are like, what are you talking about? Like, who hasn't fallen off the bike? Listen, do I need a PhD in exercise science to say that Lance Armstrong falling off a bike is different than an 80-year-old falling off a bike? It's not the same. And it shouldn't be uncomfortable even, and knowing that I'm going to get attacked for even doing this segment in order to talk about it to people. Like, this is our job. We have to acknowledge these uncomfortable truths about people who are in public service.
Here's what I say, is it should be for sure a factor that people are allowed to consider, allowed to talk openly about. I don't think, like, Leibovich kind of floats in here like maybe we should have an age limit for politicians. I don't believe that at all. And in fact, if it was up to me, I might lower the age limit at the bottom end, because ultimately you have to have faith in democracy and allow people to make their own decisions about who they think is best capable. So even with Biden, would I take, a clearly aging and not in his prime Biden over a Kamala Harris or a Pete Buttigieg? Yes.
Okay.
Way happier to have Biden in there, especially right now with the Ukraine war. Not that I'm happy with exactly how he's done it, but he has resisted some of the most maximalist, most insane hawks within his own administration and within the deep state. I don't know that Pete or Kamala would have done the same. So I think that's one factor that people should be able to consider and discuss openly. I think these politicians should have to subject themselves to rigorous questioning from the press, to rigorous debates, so that you have an ability to actually assess what their capability is in order to do the job, as opposed to like Dianne Feinstein, part of how she's still able to be in there despite notable decline way beyond, what we're seeing with Biden here, is because she doesn't have to face the public ever. So very hard for the public to get their hands around how she's faring at this point in her career ultimately. So that's my view, is it should be a completely acceptable, open part of the discussion that we can all engage in. Is he up to the task? Is he up to the task today? Do we think he'll be up to the task 4 or 6 years from now? And what are the alternatives? And let's measure them up against each other. So I'm just in favor of more democracy, more engagement on these issues so that people have a full range of options and can sort of balance these various pros and cons of all very flawed people.
I think, the only push I would give on that is look at California. California is a one-party state, rigged primary system with Dianne Feinstein. And the political elite there run the state, sadly, like an oligarchy for 55 or 50 or so million people. They're covering up Feinstein, Nancy Pelosi, Padilla, all of her colleagues, Gavin Newsom, everybody knows she's senile, and yet they don't do anything about it.
Well, not only do they not do anything about it, they cover
they cover it up.
And remember, progressives wanted to primary her.
And they said no.
And they did everything they could to quash that out of existence. I mean, ultimately, there's no workaround for having a functioning democracy.
Yeah,
that's just the bottom line here.
She can't remember things. Again, I feel bad for her. She just lost her husband. It's probably extraordinarily difficult. You've been in public service your whole life. This is all you have left. I know why you want to cling to it. I don't blame you for wanting to do that. However, you represent the interests of the largest state in the country, and those people have a say and deserve competent leadership and government on their behalf.
Sure.
How do we know that her constituent services are even close to the level that they should be?
Well, again,
you can't say that.
But again, with Biden, consider the alternative.
Would
you really want him to be age limited out, and then we're I guess we're gonna have President Kamala Harris now? No. So I think it's better to push for more democracy, to push for mandatory debates, to push for, the press to actually do their job with regards to this, than it is to put in sort of arbitrary limits that may leave us with even worse choices.
Yeah. And to the press, of course, has to be very ginger. They're he fell, but he's totally fine. Everything. Let's put this on the screen from Dave Portnoy, which I thought was particularly hilarious. With the amount of bike apologists coming out of the woodwork to defend Biden, saying falling on your skull happens all the time, you'd think they'd ban bicycles in this country. People out here making it seem like bike riding is more dangerous than swimming with sharks. Look, just be honest with people. That's all anybody wants. Everybody can see.
Bike riding is actually more dangerous than swimming with sharks.
Well, actually, yeah.
I bet there are way more. I mean, there are definitely way more bike deaths than there are.
How many shark deaths are there?
Not many. Not many. So actually, I think it is more dangerous.
Yeah.
We should work to have a society where bike lanes are more protected and where people can bike more safely, but it is actually
But bikers, that also means that you can't be annoying and just cut people off for no reason. I'm not just speaking, out of turn here in Washington, D.C.
I'm pro-biker.
I mean, generally, but sometimes they're really annoying.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.